everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Orange Report with Kira Davis. All the news and views you can use from around California, Orange County, and the nation, because let's face it, California news is America news these days. And boy, oh boy, did America get a load of California this week. This was like all California all the time. We had 3 debates this week. 3 debates. I want everyone to just think about that. Think about how little you have heard from our politicians, Democrat politicians mainly, because that's mainly all there is here, over the last 16 years. It's been radio silence for the most part, unless you catch them in a clip on the evening news or something. Suddenly, we are just overwhelmed with debates. I don't hate it. I do really appreciate it, although I have to tell you, I'm just ready to get this election going. We had 2 gubernatorial debates this past week and a Los Angeles mayoral debate. I broke down the gubernatorial debate on Monday's show, or Tuesday's show, and so you can go back and listen to that full episode because I played clips from it, but all anyone is talking about today is Spencer Pratt, as I record this. It is the LA mayor's debate that has taken over the news cycle this week. And that's really interesting because prior to that, it was the 2 Republicans, but really one Republican, Steve Hilton, on the gubernatorial stage that have been making a lot of the headlines when it comes to California news across the nation. But then came the mayor's debate. And Spencer Pratt was the newbie on that stage, really green. I watched the entire thing beginning to end, and I think, like a lot of people, I was really nervous for Spencer. Now, we need to remember that Spencer is not a newbie to the camera, right? He is a reality TV star. He grew up on MTV, and he knows what it's like to be the subject of attention. But it's a different thing, right? When you're standing on a debate stage and you're standing next to 2 seasoned politicians. I'm using scare quotes because seasoned, I guess they have time experience, but they don't really have intellect, but I guess we can call them seasoned. But, a little nervous for him. He's definitely the underdog, but man, he killed it. He killed it. He left nothing on the table. And what was really interesting about the debate was that you could tell that Nithya Raman, the LA councilwoman, and Karen Bass, the other candidate, you could tell that they had teamed up to do a little tag team against Spencer, because the way the format works is if you mention your opponent, that opponent gets 30 seconds to respond. And it was, to me, I thought it was very obvious from the start, and you could tell that Spencer picked up on it pretty quickly. But to me, it was obvious that they were just tag teaming each other in their comments, hopefully trying to box Spencer out. And they did. They did. If you compare the minutes of talking time that everyone had, Spencer definitely had the least. But it turned out to be a big, big mistake on their part. I think they're deeply regretting it today because, well, for a few reasons. Number one, those 2 women aren't intelligent enough to keep talking and to make sense. The longer they spoke, the worse it got. The more time they had to talk, the more stupid they sounded, robotic. They both sounded utterly robotic. They're just reading off of a script. But the other thing that happened is that when they gave Spencer all of that time, he had time. Remember, he was new. He's new to all of this, and he was nervous up on that stage. And you could tell he had some nerves as the debate began. But what their little plan did was it gave him time to rest in between talking points. He got to breathe, he got to collect himself, and he got to just kind of relax and observe the absurdity of what was going on right next to him. And then when it was his turn to talk, it was almost like he had been building up energy. And he just spoke with such passion and clarity. And no, he didn't sound like a normal politician. And I think that's why everyone is talking about him today. He sounded like I think I would sound if I was on that stage, or you would sound if you had the same type of opportunity. I talk to you people out there every day, and the way that Spencer sounded, that's how you sound. Frustrated, upset, just totally flabbergasted by the absurdity of what the other side tries to lob at us or lie about. At one point, it was really funny because Karen Bass told a lie and Spencer called her a liar, and he was reprimanded for that. Colleen from Channel 4, a terrible job, by the way, NBC4, terrible job. You guys suck. That was terrible. Colleen, you're actually the worst. But she scolded Spencer Pratt. Excuse me, Spencer, you can't call people names. You can't call Mayor Bass a liar. And Spencer said, but she just lied. And I think that's all of us. So I don't know. This was the coronation of Spencer Pratt as some kind of political figure. Can he win the mayoral race off of this one debate? I don't know. The odds are stacked against him. It's an uphill climb. We know that. But the way I see it, it's one day at a time. It's one step at a time. And that debate was a really big step for Spencer Pratt. But more than that, I really feel like it was a really big step for California. I feel like, I'm going to go ahead and say it, I feel like the California vibe, the California political landscape changed last night with Spencer Pratt. I do. What people will expect to hear from their politicians change. And I think in the same way that the LA fires changed us. I've talked about that at length on this show and on my other channels, that the fires really burned away sort of the last of that Democrat woke fog that some of us were laboring under, and it changed a lot. And we're seeing the results of that. I was right. We're seeing the results of that change because we're seeing two Republicans in the top, near the top in the California governor's race, and we're seeing a guy like Spencer Pratt push through in the LA mayoral race. So already we're seeing the consequences of that. I think a year from now, we're going to be looking back at what happened in that LA debate, and we're going to be saying, yeah, that was a moment of change for California. I don't know what it will look like. I hope it looks like Mayor Spencer Pratt, and he has my full endorsement, even though we're here in Orange County. We can't vote for him. I mean, we probably could if we were dishonest Democrats, but we won't because that's illegal. But we will endorse him on this show, and so we do endorse Spencer Pratt here on the Orange Report. And I recommend to you, I'm not going to play you any clips from the debate, and break them down. I recommend you go watch that whole thing. It's only 1 hour. If you didn't watch it, I promise you, it will be the best debate that you have ever watched. It's not going to be boring. But we did put together a little supercut for you. So enjoy, hopefully, the next mayor of Los Angeles, Spencer Pratt, in his first debate. Unbelievable performance.
I'm not sure how to respond to that vision of Los Angeles. This is a MAGA Republicans' idea of what Los Angeles looks like. This is really not.
This is a yes or no question and answer. So there's an LA council member. He wants voters to decide. He is saying that non-citizens, should they be allowed to vote in local elections? Is this a yes or no, Mr. Pratt?
No.
Mayor Bass.
It depends. It's not a yes or no. Depends on what? Well, first of all, when you say non-citizens, it doesn't mean they're here illegal. It doesn't mean they're undocumented. They could have green cards. They could be here perfectly legal. And there's a lot of states and cities that do that on very, very local elections. We have to see what the councilman is proposing. Councilmember Brennan. Yeah, I'd say, again, it does depend. In other places, school boards
Have
was a yes or no
non-citizens.
Yes or no?
Councilwoman Robin endorsed Mayor Bass 2 weeks before she ran for election. 2 hours before the candidacy closed, she endorsed Mayor Bass. So all of a sudden now she has all these problems with Mayor Bass. They do photos together.
Mr. Pratt.
Oh, sorry. I was just talking to my friend Rachel, who works in downtown LA. Downtown is so unsafe now that they have to serve the food. All the employees have to eat inside. They can't risk going out. That's why all these beautiful restaurants are closing, because it's so unsafe. So before we require city workers to go back into any buildings, we need to enforce the laws on the street. Councilwoman Rahman is talking about safety, yet when animal rescue activist Rebecca Corey came in and said the dogs are being tortured and abused on the streets of downtown, she walked out of the hearing. She doesn't care about safety. She doesn't care about anything she's talking about. At least Mayor Bass pretends to care.
And a meme was born. I cannot reiterate. That is what was so special about that. He was up there the way that you and I would be up there. He was talking about the things that you and I would talk about. And he was as frustrated as we were. And Nithya Raman and Karen Bass look like a couple of robots. And before I move on to the next thing, let me tell you why. Because they are just tools of the Democrat Socialist Party. They are tools of the communists. They have a script. If it sounds like they're reading a script, it's because they have a script. If it sounds like Karen Bass can't take accountability for anything, or Nithya Raman can't seem to string two good ideas together, it's because they have a script. They are not allowed to deviate from it. That's why when they were asked about non-citizens voting, Spencer gave the very easy answer, which is no, and they gave word salad answers because they know that on the one hand, the average California voter, I don't know about Los Angeles, but the average California voter doesn't want to hear it. They don't want to hear about non-citizens voting. That's how we got in this mess. But they also know that they can't stray from the script because they are owned by Democrat Socialists of America, by the DSA. And so that's why they look like robots, because they are. And you know what? Here's something you can do no matter where you are. Send Spencer some money, $10, $25, whatever you can afford, because here is something that's going to happen in order for him to beat the Democrat machine. He's going to have a huge advertising budget. I know you've probably already seen some of this stuff out there. It's already great, but he's really going to have to just cover the whole city. He's going to have to paper the whole city. So he's got a lot of work to do to reach those Los Angeles voters who don't tune in for incredible mayoral debates. And so that's where you can help Spencer. But if you can't give of your money and you're not here to give of your time, then may I suggest you pray for him and you share all of his stuff. Good luck, Spencer. We're rooting for you. All right, before we get on to our next subject, I want to remind everybody that your ballots have dropped. You should have your ballot in the mail. And I want to encourage all Republicans, get your ballots in early, mail them early, fill them out today. Find a ballot drop center and drop them. Now, I can already hear you. Calm down. I already hear you because I'm you. I'm you on this issue. I get it. No, I don't want to early vote. That encourages corruption. That encourages ballot fraud, all that kind of stuff. We know, yes, we know there's ballot fraud here in California. And when I was running for school board in 2022, the Republican Party instructed us as candidates to go out there and push this early voting message. And I was deeply uncomfortable with it because I know you're uncomfortable with it as the voter. And as I try to tell, a lot of people in the Republican Party, these people aren't uncomfortable with it because they're stupid. They're uncomfortable with it because they're smart. They understand what's been happening in the electoral system here in California. So I understand you're uncomfortable with it. Something that may make you feel better if you haven't voted early before is that those tracking numbers, they really do work. You can track your ballot. You can tell when when it gets there. You can see what hands it's been in. The problem with the early voting and the mail-in ballot isn't necessarily with your ballot being stolen. That's not really what's happening. It's with extra excess ballots being added into the system because there's no fail-safe against that. I don't think you have that much to worry about when it comes to your ballot, your personal ballot being counted. I feel strongly about that. I have never been missing a ballot. And if you track it and you see that it's not there, then you have recourse. You can apply to do another vote. So get your ballots in early. Here is why. And again, I don't like this either. I don't want it to be this way. But we need to change the system, and we can't change the system until we win, and we have to win. And in order to win, what we need to be doing is dominating these early returns. Here's why. When you return your vote, that's data. And we can't see how you voted. Your local party can't see how you voted, or your candidate can't, but they can see that you did vote. And then they can look and they can say, okay, this person's a registered Republican. They probably voted Republican. So we know we don't have to target that person for all of those text campaigns and all of those targeted ads that you get on social media that you hate and you get so tired of. If you want to get your name off that list, vote early. That's how you'll get off the list. Because then that candidate can say, okay, I can redirect the ad money and the campaign budget to these voters who have not yet responded. And we can go knock on their doors and we can send them all the texts and all of that good stuff. So you're helping the candidates save money. You're helping the party identify who has not yet voted, and they can go target those voters. And you're also just helping the polling. as we get those results in. Again, we can't see how you voted, but we can compare it to your registration. We can say, okay, 50, 60% of Republicans have gotten their ballots in. And that does a lot for sentiment. That does a lot for the vibe, for the aura of everything. It does a lot for media. You want more media coverage? Let's push those Republican candidates through in early polling. So again, I know we don't like it. I intend to do everything I can as a citizen and an independent opinion journalist to change this system, and I hope you will too. But what we're trying to do is get representatives to Sacramento who can help us change this. And they can't do it unless they are elected. And a big piece of getting them elected, folks, like it or not, is going to be early voting. So walk your vote into that ballot center and then track it so you know that it gets there. Again, I just want to reiterate, I don't think the problem is with your ballot being stolen. We don't really have a lot of those incidents that I've reported on anyway, that I know of. The problem is with excess ballots, right, being pumped into the system. That's where the problem comes in. So I really don't think your early vote is going to be as dangerous as some of us have been led to believe, but I appreciate your vigilance. And I just want to say, just for this one election cycle, just for this primary and in November, do early voting and let's fix this. Okay? Are we on the same page? All right, go team. All right, on Tuesday's show, I talked a little bit about the corruption. Mentioning the corruption. I talked about the corruption here in California when it comes to voting and our gerrymandered districts. And I talked about identity politics and how I think identity politics has been given to us by gerrymandering, but it's poisoned the well, especially here in California. And I don't know how we get out of that, but I find it grossly distasteful. It's a problem across the country and particularly in California. I do find it grossly distasteful. And as a Republican, I don't like that we engage in identity politics. And we do, California Republicans do. We choose candidates based on their race and the languages that they speak. I don't like it. I think it's damaging to our system, and I do think it needs to change. And so I questioned that on Tuesday's show. So take a look.
And I just wonder at what point Californians will either get there or this state really is just a different country. It's just a different country. I saw, but there's a debate tonight, by the way, another California governor's debate. CNN is hosting it. I saw one of the candidates, Matt Mahan, who's the governor of San Jose, that's up north in the Bay Area, talk about his record with immigrants. He said 41% of his city is foreign born. He said he was proud of that, but that is not something to be proud of. You should be scared of that. No place in America should be 41% foreign born. That's a takeover. That's a takeover. And by the way, while we're reestablishing our boundaries and resetting norms, let's kick identity politics to the curb once and for all. For a long time, I was like, okay, let's try to work with this. How do every community has different needs. And as a Black woman, who has lived in Black community, like in a majority Black community and a majority white community and other kinds, I totally get like the needs of the Black community, especially in inner city Black community, are way different than the needs I see here in my suburbs, which are mainly white. That's fair. But that's why we have districts, right? So people vote together and they vote ostensibly, they vote locally in a geographical area. When politics gets messed up is when people on the left start redrawing and gerrymandering and drawing these districts in crazy shapes, trying to get a majority Black vote when we're not the majority anywhere. Almost. And that creates racial tension and voting tension. And what gerrymandering has done has created the atmosphere of identity politics. So you know what I hate? I hate here in California, we're the worst at it. Even Republicans do it. We feel like we have to do it. I'd like to challenge Republicans to say, no, we don't have to do this. We divide our votes up by different kinds of Americans. And we accept this. We do it too on the right. We read the polls, or we get Black American voters voting for Trump more. Or here's the white liberal, the white woman vote. Here is the Latino vote. Here is the Asian Pacific Islander vote. Here is the Puerto Rican vote. But it's a Puerto Rican American, Asian Pacific American, Somali American, which I hate. That should never be a thing. Arab American. There should only be American. We should never be. This is the problem. We're dividing politics up by vote, and now we're dividing candidates up by vote. And here in California, what we do is we pick people based on their race to run. And it's particularly a problem with the Asian community. I find it despicable, to be honest. I don't have any respect for it. I respect some of our Asian politicians who are, solid capitalists and conservatives. Not saying I don't respect the individual, but I hate this BS about how in order to get the Asian vote, we got to run an Asian candidate. And it is that way. I'm not saying that it's not that way, but we've let it get that way. There should be no Asian vote. There should be an American vote. And those people should be grouped in communities that are geographically important, not culturally important. And that's a function of a system that, that doesn't have anything to do with you on a local level. That's a function of the immigration system that doesn't enforce our immigration laws. You have to speak English to live here. You have to write English to live here. You have to take the citizenship test, and you can't vote unless you're a citizen. Like, all of those things go away, and then it waters down the electorate. And so we don't have an American electorate. We have foreign electorates voting in American elections. It's awful. It's pathetic. It's destroying this country. The birthright citizenship, Supreme Court needs to do the right thing on this. But if they don't, Congress needs to step in. Or what is America even? This is what I'm saying about California. At what point are we California?
Well, let me know what you think. Was I off base there? Was I on to something? I just feel very uncomfortable. And again, as I said in that clip, it is that way. That's how it is here. We do have large blocks of immigrant communities who will only vote with people that look like them. But I think if the Republican Party wants to have a fighting chance in this state in the future, to set up a solid 20, 30 years of Republican governance, then we're going to have to address the identity politics thing, and we're going to have to get good at messaging to Americans. Not Asian Americans or Latino Americans or Black Americans, but just Americans. Just Americans. On Tuesday's show, I also talked about the power of local activism, and I brought up a couple of names that will be familiar to you here in Orange County, Amy and Carl David. And I'm still trying to get them on this show where they've been busy, I've been busy. But you might know of Amy and Carl David because they set up the Blessin Foundation, and that is the activist group that they set up to fight the lithium battery power plant that was going to be dropped right here in the middle of Orange County in some of the most expensive real estate that we have. So they formed this group. They were hugely successful, and now they want to take that format, that formula that they honed, and they want to help other communities push back on this type of thing. And to me, they are the perfect example of why local activism is the most powerful activism you can do. And I want to encourage everybody who's watching from outside of the state, don't fast forward through this section. I know you're going to say this is Kira's local section. She's doing Orange County politics. I can fast forward. No, don't do that. This will help you too. That's why I do this show. Because one thing I have learned doing politics, but particularly Southern California politics, is that what happens here is happening somewhere where you are. You've got a lithium battery plant somewhere where you are. You've got a huge development happening that you don't want there somewhere. You've got a data center plopping down in the middle of your farmland somewhere. Every county has this going on. So there are tools that you have access to help you fight those battles. But watch this next segment and get involved right where you are. You don't have to care about the president. You don't have to care about any of that stuff. But you need to care about your own backyard, because that's something the president can't care about.
But really, we're in this era where local news is national news. And even if you see some local reports on here that might not necessarily be relevant to you, I promise you what I have learned from doing this show is it is relevant to you in some way, because what you see going on here in Orange County is going on somewhere near you. And you need to know, you need to have the tools to fight it, because you can't depend on Donald Trump to fight all these battles. You can't depend on the federal government to fight all these battles. It's not even their place. I have, my algorithm is really, has been set to data centers that are going up. And this is the next frontier, people. This is the next battle. Data centers, they take a lot of water. They take a lot of energy. I know Trump has tried to mitigate that by letting data centers produce their own energy, but in order to produce their own energy, they need land to put up energy producers, put up energy production. And so they're not going, to the middle of the deserts, or they're not doing like China. China's building them in the ocean. They're not doing that. They're coming to our farmlands and they're buying up our farmlands. So there's a lot, and that's all local people that are going to stop that. And it doesn't stop it. It just moves it to the next town. So you have to be vigilant, is what I'm saying. You have to be vigilant about your water rights, your energy, your local taxes, all that local fraud. You have to be vigilant. And hopefully soon I'm going to get my friends Carl and Amy David on this show. They are great people. I tried to have them months ago, but they were so busy. But we had a lithium battery plant that was going to get plopped right in the middle of Orange County here, in some of the most expensive property that in California. And Amy and Carl, longtime residents, raised their whole families here. They really decided they weren't going to let that happen. And they started a group to try to oppose it. And it worked. They made so much noise. They were so successful that they took that plant off of the table. But I ran into Amy and Carl recently, and I was asking them about it. I said, I still want to get you on the show. I'd love to talk about how you did this. And they said, well, we're not done, actually. We ended up making our organization sort of a statewide organization, because yes, the lithium battery plant moved from our backyard, but they're just looking at land in the neighbor's backyard. And so we want to teach those people how to fight it. I thought that's brilliant. You've never heard of Amy and Carl David, especially if you're not in Orange County, you've never heard of them, but they're doing something that could help you where you are. So I just I guess this is a tangent, but this is really important. Like what's going on locally is important. And I get a lot of stories from people. I get a lot of emails like, Kira, this is going on in my neighborhood. You should really cover this. Every story is important, but I'm just one person. And I am lower tier in this industry. Always have been. I work. I'm not complaining. I get steady work. I love my job, and I meet the most fascinating people, and I get to hobnob with the most interesting people. I'm not complaining, but what I'm saying is, like, I'm only one independent opinion journalist, and I have so many stories coming at me. I can't do them all, and it's not even my responsibility to do them all. But pro tip, I'll say this: if you're looking for exposure for a story, work up the story first and then send it to me, right? Then send it around, because I don't think people understand how much effort it actually takes to work up a story, even to write 700 to 1,500 words. For some writers like me, that's an all-day affair. I don't just sit down and bang out that stuff in an hour. It takes a long time. Then you got to do your fact checking, your back checking, all of that stuff. So, but if you come to somebody with something prepared, even if it's just a little essay, it's easier to cover. It's easier to even suss out the information, or make up bullet points. But it's a lot more effort on the part of opinion journalists like me to put the stories together when we're really not close to the heart of the story. But you are, so put it together. And even if you can't get to somebody like me, just put it out there. Everybody has social media. Everybody has a Facebook page. Make a blog post on a Facebook page. You don't need a blog. You don't need 100,000 followers, but get on the record, put something out there. It's really important. So I'm hoping again to get Amy and Carl David on this show soon enough so they can tell you about what they did to fight this in their community. And hopefully you'll take some of those tools.
Okay, Amy, Carl, I'll hit you up soon. All right, let's move on. On Wednesday's show, I broke down the gubernatorial debate. I played some clips for you, talked a little bit about what happened, and talked a little bit about why it is a turnout election, why it's important for you to get out there and vote. Yeah, let's just play the clip from that. I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
And I said at the beginning of 2025, when we watched the inauguration, I said the word of 2025 is going to be fatigue. And I think that is still trailing through to 2026 because Democrats have been running on the same talking points in this state, across the country, really. But in this state, they've been running on the same talking points for the last 20 years. And for the last 16 years, they've been exclusively in charge in this state. They even have a super majority. There is no Republican opposition, basically. They have had their opportunity to do whatever they want here, to enact their every dream and whim without opposition. And they have done so. And here we are in the year of our Lord, 2026, with many average Californians having to wade through human feces and human tragedy and crime and gang activity just to get to school in the morning, just to get to work in the morning. And everyone is tired here. Everyone is. And so then to hear those Democrats on stage last night rehashing their same talking points, rehashing their same promises, the same ones they've been making for the last 16 years of one-party rule in this state, it's fatiguing. It's exhausting. Not a single one had a new idea. Every conversation that came from the Democrat side last night was just exclusively about how much of your money, California, they're going to take. That's all. That was their solution to everything. I think Matt Mahan one time, the whitest guy you know, Matt Mahan, one time said, hey, maybe we need to think about how we're spending the money before we ask Californians to fund more. And he got what for that, right? Katie Porter was like, or I think Becerra, somebody was like, you said you want to shrink government. Like that's taboo on the left. Oh my God, shrink government? You might as well say you want to kidnap everyone's firstborn son. And then that energetically defended himself. I didn't say I wanted to shrink government. I just said we need to maybe like audit it before we grow it. It's just the same stuff over and over and over again. Not a single new idea or fresh idea. And they all looked utterly boring standing next to those two Republicans on stage. Look, you can say what you want about Chad Bianco, and I do often, but he has personality. And Steve Hilton also is an interesting guy. That's why he had a successful talk show for a decade, right? They're both interesting people. They're interesting to look at. They don't look like the typical Democrat candidate up there. And they're interesting to hear from, largely because they're Republicans, and we never get to hear from Republicans on a statewide stage. So it wasn't hard, shockingly, it wasn't hard for them to stand out. You see, in the past, Democrat voters really genuinely could. They could just get away with the social talking points, right? Life in California was good enough for them to do that. Hey, I want to give more people more money, more health care, fewer police. We want more programs for education and LGBTQ. You could run on all that and everybody would be like, yay, that's great. We really do want to help homeless people. We really do want to help the gay community. We really do want more education programs. And then they could vote for it and then forget about it because life was fine in California. It was chugging along. And then the engine started to sputter right when I got here, almost 20 years ago. The engine started to sputter, and now we're at a complete halt. And so now, really, Democrat voters, what they do want to see is solutions. They don't want to see those solutions from Republican candidates. They don't, right? But right now, Republican candidates are the only ones offering solutions. So if I were a Democrat and I were looking at that debate, I would look at all of my candidates that I'm supposed to vote for, and I would say not a single one has offered a plan that sounds different from the thing they've been offering us for the last 16 years. And if that's the case, we're just headed for more grief. That's what I would be thinking. And maybe I would be thinking of staying home. Because, folks, that's all that Republicans need to win. We don't even really need a bunch of Democrats to come over to the other side. A depressed Democrat vote is the same as a Republican vote. And if I were a Democrat voter, I would be very depressed with what I saw last night.
All right, drop it in the comments. What did you think about the debate? What did you think of those performances? I always think Steve is really strong. Chad had a couple of really great moments. And then we had another debate, another gubernatorial debate last night as I record this show. It was on Wednesday night. But, and it was fine, overshadowed by the Los Angeles debate, of course, for good reason. I feel like everybody on that gubernatorial stage is as fatigued as we are. Like, I hate to complain because we may never get this kind of access to these California politicians again. It's a very rare thing that we're watching happening, and I'm grateful for it, but oh my goodness, it's Chad and Steve are great, they do their job every time, but these Democrats, it just gets so hard to listen to them just lie or say so many words coming out of their mouth and they're never saying anything, or it's the same boring talking points. Jose Baccaria has immigrant parents and his mom shops with coupons. And oh, by the way, he was in DHS, and Katie Porter drives a minivan, and Antonio Villaraigosa is just there. He's just there. Matt Mahan, always the whitest guy it's just like Tom Steyer is he even a real person? It's almost like he has a skin suit on. He's so weird to look at and to listen to. And it's like he's running a campaign for my mom. My mom's a boomer. It's like my mom's like a lefty liberal boomer. It's like he's running a campaign from 50 years ago, back when he was, a young activist. It's just, we're so sick and tired of it. It's just, it's going to be a drag. Drop your comments in the comments. That's what the comments are for, obviously, duh. But I want to know, who do you think had the best lines, had the best digs, or tell me your worst. Tell me who you think did the worst. I'd love to hear what you think, and Godspeed to all of us. Let's just push through this next month, y'all. We got one more month to go. Well, and then we're on to general elections, but let's get over that hump first. Hopefully we push our Republicans through, and then we can complain about all of the ads going into November. Well, we had a special treat on the show this week. I welcomed candidate for lieutenant governor here in California, Gloria Romero. She is running on the golden ticket, on Steve Hilton's golden ticket. And I'm going to try to make a push to run through the whole golden ticket this month. I just want to do one last push for those of you who are hanging onto your ballots and you haven't really seen all the candidates yet. They're all fantastic. I've gotten to know all of them over the past few months. So Gloria Romero stopped by and I asked her, what is the position of lieutenant governor? What does it do? I think a lot of people think that it's just a placeholder. It's just sort of the assistant governor, Like you imagine if you watched the show Veep on HBO, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, where the main joke on that show was every day it would open, she'd be at the White House and she would say, did the president call? Did the president call? We imagine that the lieutenant governor is just this person who's waiting for a call from the governor. But it turns out that job is actually a really important job. And when you find out all of the things the lieutenant governor actually is tasked with doing, you're going to ask yourself, what the hell is our lieutenant governor doing right now? And who is that person anyway? And before I launch you into this interview, I do want to say something about Gloria switching parties, because I know I have heard from a lot of you out there who feel suspicious of her because she's a former Democrat, and you've expressed your hesitancy to vote. And I don't want to insult anyone, but I do think that is very short-sighted. I actually don't understand it. I'm a former Democrat. Many years ago, I came over to the Republican side after I'm black. We're default Democrats. You got to do a lot of work to bust out of that. There are a lot of great Republicans that are former Democrats. In fact, they're great Republicans because they're former Democrats and they realize what's going on that side. So I don't know, are we supposed to just like raised Republicans, where we're only allowed to let people in the party who were raised Republican. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, some of the best Republican stories are people who realized the danger of the Democrat Party, and they're very passionate Republicans like me. So I don't find that to be a legitimate argument against Gloria, but, for your own peace of mind, I did ask her about it, and I asked her bluntly about it. And I encourage you to take a look at what she had to say and let us know, what did you think about that? But listen to this whole interview. You're going to be shocked at what the lieutenant governor actually does. I have two things to tell you: Title IX and dogs. Hit it.
There she is. Gloria, hello.
Hello. Good to see you.
Hi, Gloria. It's so great
Good
to see you.
Thank you so much for being.
It's my pleasure to have you. I'm so glad you're here. Gloria, I have gotten to know you a little bit better over this past year as you've been running around campaigning with Steve on the golden ticket. And I have to say, you are lovely. I have just really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more. And I think you are an amazing political figure, as well as just an interesting person to know. But I have to say, perhaps my favorite part about you is Tubby, the dog.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I'm a big advocate for our pets, our animals. In fact, when elected lieutenant governor, I really want to put a focus statewide on the quality, the condition of our animal shelters in the state, really emphasizing no-kill shelters and encouraging adoption, fostering, and rescue. So thank you so much. And Tubby, I'll let Tubby know that you're his fan.
Yeah, well, I love that, Gloria. I actually had not heard that. Had you heard you talk about that as a part of your platform? I think that's amazing because we have just seen. Now we've got a mayoral debate tonight in Los Angeles. I know you're going to be tuning in, and but we've just seen Spencer Pratt was down there on Skid Row, highlighting the horrible conditions for animals down there, and the state sort of turns a blind eye. The city turns a blind eye. Some of those people, it's a lot of drug issues. They're giving drugs to their dogs first to see if the drugs are quote safe for them to use. It's just horrifying conditions. Gloria, talk a little bit about that, what you might do as lieutenant governor.
Right. Well, also, I have also been on Skid Row working with a number of animal rights organizations. I have personally toured those streets. I've seen those streets, and also have witnessed dogs being chained. I have heard the stories about the breeding, because the breeding of these animals is used to basically then take the pups and sell them for drugs, for cigarettes, for sex, a number of issues overall. We have heard also from many about the drugging of dogs, the testing to see if this particular drug will poison somebody or not. So there's a lot of issues related to just animal cruelty that we should not have on the streets of Los Angeles. So I know Spencer Pratt has been there as well. There are some fabulous animal rights organizations, not only in Los Angeles, but in other parts of the state. And I have an ability to be able to connect them statewide. So that is one of the issues I have spoken about in some of the town halls and meetings that I've had. And there are some very strong animal rights advocates who are voters in California and who want to see government at all levels do better. So this is something that I have launched and I feel very passionate about. But, okay, go ahead. So to the race of lieutenant governor. Do you want me to ask questions or just for me to talk a little bit about what it is, what I plan?
Let me guide us through, because one of the reasons why I wanted to I'm going through the entire golden ticket. I'm going to end with Steve. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Gloria, and I want to have everybody on, is because a lot of these offices, Californians don't understand them. They don't know what they do. They oftentimes, Californians overlook those offices when they're going down their ballot, or they just pick a name that looks familiar to them, which is very dangerous. Don't do that. Everybody, I just want to reiterate, you don't have to fill out every box on the ballot. It's not a multiple choice quiz. If you have an office you don't understand, feel free to skip it. But I want to make sure that you are as educated as possible about what these offices are and why they're important to you. And lieutenant governor is one of those offices that I think people just think, oh, it's just the assistant governor. It's just somebody, in case the governor croaks, then the lieutenant governor, goes to work. So why don't you start, Gloria, by telling us a little bit about what the position of lieutenant governor is and why you think you're qualified for it?
Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. Most people have no idea, first of all, who even is the lieutenant governor today. In virtually every town hall, I start by asking this question, and maybe in a group of about 200 people, maybe 4 hands go up. And I think it shows that the current lieutenant governor, whose name I'm not going to advocate for, is basically non-existent. And I think it's a real shame because it undermines and contributes to the disrespect of the role that it should be. So, number one, yes, the lieutenant governor is the next in line, the heartbeat away from being governor should, God forbid, something happen to the governor of the state of California. So I would step in to be that governor. Also, whenever the governor is out of state, I would be the acting governor during the time that the governor is out of state. Let's go through the exact responsibilities. In addition to that, I would be president of the Senate. And what does that mean? Most lieutenant governors treat it as a ceremonial position. Well, once upon a time, as you know, I was the majority leader of the California Senate. I'm the only lieutenant governor candidate who has had that direct experience with the Senate. And the reason why this is so important is because all gubernatorial nominations for appointments to be confirmed as secretaries, as cabinet appointees, departmental heads, they go through the California Senate. And that's where, because of my experience having served on the very powerful, influential Rules Committee many years ago and working with the senators, knowing the rules of the Senate, it's very important to make sure that we get essentially the government that we voted for, which includes all the departmental heads and the secretaries, etc. So I would be a president of the Senate that wouldn't just show up on the days of the festivities, but actually be there meeting with senators, introducing the gubernatorial appointments, working with them, helping to vet that. And Kira, I think this is so important because I anticipate that when we win, there is going to be lawfare in Sacramento. There's going to be a resistance to getting the cabinet. And as we know, it can't just be a governor. You've got to get the cabinet, the department. So that's critical. That's one major role that I would do. Day one, I'm going to meet with every single senator, both sides of the aisle, because this is now about the people's choice. And I'm going to be talking with them about working with them, introducing the gubernatorial candidates. You have to have dialogue. And so that's going to be very important starting day one. The next thing is, and this is my favorite part of being lieutenant governor, is that the lieutenant governor serves on every board of higher education in California. The University of California, the Cal State system, the community colleges. You know my background. I am nationally recognized as an education reformer and leader. So I will serve on these boards. And I'm not stopping there. I am going to create an education pipeline starting with transitional kindergarten through high school and into college to be able to oversee and monitor and track. And you know, Kira, the reason why this is so important also is because even though we have a top quality higher education system, just a few weeks ago, the University of California, San Diego released a report showing that 1 out of 8 of its incoming freshmen, they're not able to do remedial math or reading. This is the University of California. So we have a push-pull issue in our education system. And so I'm one that's going to be really focused on meritocracy. I don't believe in grade promotion. I believe in getting the students ready in the K through 12 system, ready for college to do both college ready and workforce preparedness in a new economy. So that's going
Let
to
me
be a
stop you
major
there,
part.
Gloria.
Sure.
Let me ask you about this because I know that you are or have been an advocate for school choice as well. So how will that play into your approach to education when you win?
Well, I think, again, too, that's why I want to create the education pipeline to work with before they even get to college, which I begin to oversee, making sure that we have curriculum in place, meritocracy. I believe in merit pay. I believe in looking at performance and student outcomes, linking those together, getting rid of the woke ideology, and basically working with our boards, our regions, our school districts who actually do adopt the curriculum. I wouldn't, but I can oversee and ask questions about this to say, look, we've got to have our children reading by age 9, because if they are not, and today in California, they are not reading by age 9, then we're just passing along and pushing forward kids who really don't have a plan to succeed. Many parents today then are forced to accept this, but the good news is there are school choice options. There just aren't enough of them, though. So there are charter schools, magnet schools, homeschooling. I believe in opportunity scholarships where basically parents can choose to send their children to a private school and begin to look at funding with public money. Because if a school is failing over and over, and so many are in California, then parents shouldn't be trapped in that school. They should have the choice. And so many parents, like, take a look at Gavin Newsom as the governor of the state of California. He can afford to send his children to private schools, but most families in California cannot. Working class, low income, middle class, it's a lot of money. And so, because of the lack of resources, parents shouldn't be forced to continue to send their children to a school that the state of California identifies as chronologically underperforming. And so that's that's where the school choice initiative comes in. And I've long championed that we've got to have it. I mean, think about our college system, for example. College runs on a very different system. In TK through 12, you're basically assigned your school by zip code, where you live. And there are great districts, there are great schools, but for too many in California, unfortunately, and we could go on and on about the reasons why, kids are failing. Up to 80% of children not reading at basic levels of proficiency. You look at the contract, what we call the dance of the lemons, all kinds of issues. College, if you think about it, that is school choice. And all that means is you get to pick the college that you're interested in. Yes, you have to apply. Yes, you have to meet criteria. Yes, you have to be admitted depending on space. But that is a school choice option. And we don't even think that it's, controversial. It's you apply, you are vetted, you go through. Well, TK through 12, it's basically this is your school, take it or leave it, even when the state identifies it as failing. And I recommend, first and foremost, let's turn it around. Every school should be high performing. Let's look at what we have to do to turn it around. But when those schools don't turn around, and you can't wait forever, then those parents should have the right to basically walk away with the resources to a school, a charter school, a private, a homeschooling, with the funds that the state of California, we the people, are paying for that child to be educated. That's all that school choice is.
So, Gloria, you said something interesting. You said people can't wait around forever. This is what made me a school choice advocate many years ago, realizing that, kids are going to cycle through this system. And then it's sort of a reset for parents, but the same old administrators and bureaucrats are there running stuff, and they get to have the final say, and they just wait all of us out. But you said, oh boy, it just slipped right out. My middle age, Gloria. I'm middle age.
Well, I'm
No,
with
I
you
guess
on that.
we're getting all of the same talking points on these issues. We watched the debates last night. I don't know if you, I'm sure you were, I don't know, were you there? Did you?
No, I was not there, but I watched it as well, along with so many others in California.
Yeah. And so I'd love to get some of your thoughts on this, but I think something you said reminded me of it, because really what we're hearing is like the same old ideas, the same old solutions for the same old problems. And that's what I was hearing over and over and over again. The word I kept thinking of was fatigue. You know, it was just like, I am not hearing a single new idea. I've gotten more new ideas from you, Gloria, in the 7 minutes we've been talking than I heard coming from that debate stage last night. But I would love to have your thoughts about how you see your opponents in this, which are the Democrats. You're running on the Republican side, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit too, because I know people have questions about that. But you're running on the Republican side, and as a Republican, as a Trump Republican, and you've been doing this job for, like you see, you were the leader of the California Majority Whip in the California Senate. You're one of the first women to do that job. You have a historic pedigree here in California. You've been dealing with Democrats, even as a Democrat at one point, for years. How did you view what you saw on stage last night, as you're just hearing these same rehashed talking points? And how does that affect, your passion to run for lieutenant governor?
Right. At this point in the game, and looking at the debate last night, it's clear that it's really jostling to see who is going to be in the top two. And that's really what we saw last night. There were interesting questions, but you get the bickering because essentially with the 4 Democrats, I think, and the 2 Republicans, were giving some very sharp, concise answers. I mean, I support Hilton, but there are many who support Bianco, and they were answering the questions because they recognize one-party rule has devastated California. The other 4 Democrats were basically saying they were going after the new top leader in the public opinion polling for the Democrats, Javier Becerra. So it was really sort of a let's pile on and attack. So you had all these multiple levels of what was happening in that debate last night. So if you'll notice, there was a lot of concentration on Javier Becerra from other Democrats basically saying, I'm going to edge you out because I want to be in the top 2. So a lot of it was showmanship and gamesmanship. So that goes back to your point. There were many questions that were not really substantive, and the answers were more political. Like even Katie Porter complaining, ironically, about the temperament that was being exhibited on the stage. So all of those like issues that aren't real. How it impacts me is I think I want to keep focused on almost half California's budget is spent on education. And even still today, we have a failing, not even a passing, a failing education system when over 50% of the kids are not reading at basic levels or doing math at basic levels. And then they go into the college system where they should be ready, but too many are redirected towards remedial education or they can't get in. And that is something that is just horrendous. I mean, think about changes of technology in our community, in our state. We are competing now, not just with other states around the world, but by the way, the state of Mississippi has bypassed California. Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. But we're competing with, India and China and Europe. I mean, this is an international workforce. So I'm very laser focused there because this is an area where I will have a real voice and real power serving on these institutions of higher education that account for almost 50% of our budget. And most people have no idea about that. But even more than that as well, in the jostling about so-called, climate change and other far left woke issues, I look at being lieutenant governor, I will serve on the coastal and the land commissions. And Kira, you know that I live in Los Angeles. I was personally impacted, although thank God my home did not burn, although I was evacuated for part of this time. but we were impacted by the fires in Los Angeles, in the Palisades and Eaton Valley. And this is one where this was not caused by climate change. It was caused by an incompetent governor and mayor. And we need to focus on that. And that's an area where when I serve on the Coastal Commission, especially the rebuilding of permits, the delay of all of this, changing some of those woke policies that have allowed for all the underbrush to basically grow without being removed. So it provides basically the tinder foil to basically set off when that arsonist set it off initially. So there's so much that I can do. And right now, the current lieutenant governor, silence, nothing at all, no mention, no comment. I'm going to speak for that. And also, too, on education, if I can go back to that, Title IX. You and I, we're women. We know what a woman is. We are mothers. We are not birthing people. I want to get sensitivity back to saying, that the laws matter. So many girls fight for scholarships. They get into college. They try to go then and compete. And suddenly somebody who is just physiologically, biologically more powerful is going to jump into a swimming pool and immediately outcompete. And there goes that young woman's scholarship and life training. That's just wrong. So equality, Title IX, I support that. I'm going to fight to make sure that there is no anti-Semitism on our campuses. We saw the horrendous treatment of Jewish students at UCLA. I mean, the barricading of students just because they're Jewish, the fear of their lives. I did 2 postdoctoral fellowships at UCLA. I walked that quad. I was in those libraries. And I think, my God, how are we paying and allowing for this to happen for any student to be in fear of their life for basically who they are? So there are so many things we can do if we elect a lieutenant governor who understands the role and is willing to stand up to special interests, call it out, and stand up for the people. So I'm excited about the opportunity.
This is one of the things that I love so much about your campaign. I've heard you 4 or 5 times on the stump now, and everybody's always surprised when you list all of the jobs of the lieutenant governor. A lot of people, I mean, me included, don't understand. But I want to take just 1 second, audience. I want you to hear what she just told you. This is not just an office that you brush over. This is not just a token office. This office has power. It matters who you vote for. This office can influence what happens to your children at school, at college, and can also influence that the Coastal Commission. That's a big flippin' deal. And to have somebody who will reside over the Senate with Gloria's experience, I just want everyone to start connecting these positions to their day-to-day life. This position will have an effect on your day-to-day life. You don't just brush over these offices or think, I'm just going to check this box for the Democrat that's already there, because you're missing out on some really influential help. If you just understand the office. So this is what I wanted to have you on for. But before we're coming close to the end of our time here together, Gloria, but I do want to bring up your experience as the head of the California Senate and as a former Democrat, because this is one of the big criticisms that a lot of people will have on the Republican side. Democrats don't care, but on the Republican side, because we are running a race between 2 Republican candidates at the gubernatorial level. You're not, but you are on the golden ticket. And so, a lot of people have questions. They say, well, Gloria, you used to be a Democrat and Democrats have ruined this state. I have questions about you now being a Republican and running as a Republican. I don't, by the way, I don't. I know exactly who Gloria is and what she's doing, but I know that there are a lot of people out there who might have questions. So when did you decide to leave the Democrat Party, and why? And why are you running as a Republican?
And I would say, I understand the criticism. And I also say, guess who else used to be a Democrat? President Ronald Reagan, Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, Leo Terrell, Donald Trump himself. So many.
Kira Davis. Kira Davis
Kira
used to be one.
Davis, Gloria Romero. I mean, so many of us. And every time I go to a town hall, I always say, "Come on, former Democrats, raise your hands." And there's a handful, many times, many who raise their hands saying, "I used to be one." So, I tell people, I grew up in a very strong Catholic household. The pictures on the wall, the Pope and John F. Kennedy. And it was a time in America really where it was sort of an America first long ago, where there was a belief in the American worker. It was American exceptionalism. We grew up with that notion of the idea being you don't ask what your country can do for you, but what we do for our country. Over the years, I came from a working class family, saw that, believed in it, really tried to fight on the issues that I believed in. School choice was an issue where even back in the days, all the time that I served in the legislature, I walked in championing school choice. I left championing school choice. I was kind of considered to be a bad Democrat in those days. And it was actually almost an honorary Republican because I would work with all the Republicans to get the school choice action forwarded. I sat with, I was part of the coalition with Ward Connerly, even back then as a Democrat, to defend Proposition 209 and to make sure that we do not allow for racial preferences or profiling in admission, employment, and contracting. I did that years ago as a Democrat. I also, years ago, as a Democrat as well, supported the recall of Governor Newsom. I actually supported Larry Elder because of his view on school choice. I readily endorsed across the aisle, whether they were Republican or Democrat, based on, is this person good for parents and families and for us here? So I hear that, and I just invite people, take a look at my record overall, because people who know me know that everybody has a party label, but what do they do? And do they put country or state first? I was one that always said, the deed didn't define me. It was really what I was growing up with. I advocated for reform. I would like to see the Democrat Party change. I finally said it's not going to change. But more importantly, in looking at walking away from the party, I just said, I don't recognize this party anymore on environmental, on a number of issues. But more importantly, I was inspired by Donald Trump, the blue collar billionaire. I spoke at his only rally in California, in Coachella. And you know what, Kira, when I met President Trump, he was so gracious. He said, welcome to the Republican Party. And I told him that he had inspired me. And I had been watching him for years. I had actually been contributing to his campaign over time because I saw how horrible he was being treated with the lawfare. And it was an honor to be able to speak with him. I never thought I would run for lieutenant governor. I mean, I never thought I'd run for office again. And it was over time that folks kept saying, you know what, Gloria, we need to have somebody there because California, I've long said, we're not a blue state. We're not a red state. We're the golden state. And there are so many people, regardless of their party label, they want change. They want something new. I think that's why the golden ticket has really resonated with so many, because it's not really ideological. It's common sense. It works for the betterment of communities. And when people understand the role of lieutenant governor and my role in it, they say, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm hopeful that we can win. I ask, your listeners, your viewers to go to gloriajromero.com, gloriajromero.com. It's my website. If you can make a contribution, fabulous, learn about it. I'm endorsed by the California Republican Party, Reform California, so many others. And it's an honor to be here and to have entered into the big, beautiful red tent that the Republican Party is in California. It's an honor.
Well, it's been an honor to have you on the show today and to talk more about this very important office. You've got my vote, Gloria. I don't know if that
Oh,
you've
that's
got my
amazing.
vote.
Thank you so much.
I definitely vote. I have already voted, actually. Vote for and endorse Gloria Romero here on the Orange Report. We endorse her. We endorse the entire golden ticket. Gloria, we're going to leave it here. We're going to say goodbye to our listeners. Thank you to the chatter. Scott Flava, good to see you. Appreciate your input. And hey, yes, you can take my word for it. I wouldn't lie to you on this show. Gloria is good. She's good peeps. I promise you. Because I don't mess with messy people. I promise you that. So Gloria's good people. You can take my word to the bank. Gloria, God bless you. We will catch you on the other side, and good luck to you. And maybe we'll come back and get your thoughts later on at some point on the mayor's debate tonight. That should be interesting.
God bless you as well. Thank you.
All right, well, that wraps our Friday show. I want to encourage everybody, make sure that you're signed up for our Facebook page, YouTube account, and X. We broadcast live to those places 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I do that from home, not in the studio, and it's just more of a podcast format. And that way it's easier to sort of hit the news of the day. And then Friday, we do a wrap show, and we really try to focus our Friday shows for California and Orange County. But again, if you're in the national audience, this will be meaningful to you, because what is happening here, I promise you, is happening where you are. And so you need to know about these things. Go out there and fight for your own backyard. No one else is going to protect your community. That's your job. The president's got a lot of jobs going on. Marco Rubio, he's got a lot of jobs going on, right? They've got our national borders to take care of. We need to take care of our community borders. In Orange County, there is no population that is more educated or more passionate about the area that they live in than you. So go out there and protect your community. We're all in this fight together, and get your ballots in, get them in this week. Do it right now while I'm pointing at you. Pick up that ballot. I'm pointing at you. I'm looking at you. Pick it up right now, fill it out, and send it in. And I'll see you next time on The Orange Report.